The Royal Rumble is later this week, and I want to get views, so here's 31 Royal Rumble facts. I probably could have gone with 30 actually. That probably would have been a better idea. The worst number is 2. Everyone always says, oh yeah, you don't want to get number 1. But at least if you do get number 1 and you pull off the impossible, everyone thinks you're the coolest wrestler ever. Whenever the Royal Rumble comes around, they're showing like statistics and their video packages, you will always be guaranteed to see a video of Shawn Michaels winning the Royal Rumble at number 1. But if you win it at number 2, don't care, didn't ask, shut up, no one cares. Number 2 has literally just as much work to do in the Rumble as number 1. Rey Mysterio spent almost twice the amount of time in his Rumble win as Shawn Michaels did in his, but no one cares because he drew the other number. The one thing that I love about the Royal Rumble is the fact that it's defined by the prize of a world title shot at WrestleMania. The reason I love that so much is because that only got introduced in 1993. So if you were one of the people who won the Royal Rumble back in the 80s and you went through all the stress and effort of winning the match, you literally just got a handshake. Another statistic you'll see pop up in the Royal Rumble video packages is who spent the most amount of time in one match and who spent the least amount of time in one match. And interestingly enough, the person who spent the least amount of time in a Royal Rumble match is you. It's you. Don't lie, I know it's you. 0 minutes and 0 seconds. People rip the piss out of Santino Marella for only surviving 1 second in the Rumble, yet I've never seen you in a Royal Rumble ever. Not for a single second. So congratulations on your record. The 2020 Royal Rumble featured one of the most emotional moments in the history of wrestling, as Edge made his return after being forced to retire 9 years ago through injury. This moment was historic. It was emotional. It was iconic. So much so that Edge made his way down to the ring to hit his first spear in almost a decade, and Kevin Dunn decided, you know what would be a really good idea? You know what the people really want to see? A random shot of the crowd. Spears are boring. We see that all the time. Goldberg does it, Reigns, Lashley. Rhino did the gore, and that was way cooler than that Avengers stuff. Let's just cut to the crowd and miss the first spear in 9 years. And look, there's a reason this man is in charge. I don't know what that reason is. The 2004 Royal Rumble is obviously quite a controversial one, but for those of you that don't understand why, Big Show basically fell over the ropes by himself before all the 30 competitors entered the ring, and there was no winner. So, yeah. I know some people are probably thinking, why don't they use a cage during the Royal Rumble? And the reason for this is actually because the cage would block people from being eliminated once they're thrown over the ropes, and the alternative would be to drag people up to the top of the cage and then throw them off. But the problem is that is basically just legal complications with killing your employees for entertainment. The 2001 Royal Rumble was quite an exciting Rumble. It was basically the season finale of the Attitude Era. You know, you had The Rock, Steve Austin, Kane eliminating everyone, and if you ask anyone who was raised in that era, they'll usually tell you that 2001 was their favourite Rumble. But one interesting fact about this Royal Rumble was the fact that Robert F. Kennedy, the brother of JFK, was not invited to this Royal Rumble, and there was actually a few interesting reasons for this, right? Firstly, he never showed any support or interest in not just Royal Rumbles, but wrestling in general. And the second reason was that he was dead. The buzzer is something you'll recognise if you've ever watched the Royal Rumble before. At the end of every countdown, you'll usually hear, and that signifies the introduction of the next participant. However, have you ever wondered why they chose the buzzer? There's actually several reasons for this. So, take for example Euron Nevian, the Irish national anthem. This song is roughly a minute and a half long. If this song was played in its entirety between every entrance, then the odds are that the match would just go on, it'd go on quite a bit longer than it needs to. The lyrics are also in Irish, which means that a lot of people might not be able to understand them, whereas the buzzer only lasts a second and it's in Lithuanian, so everybody understands it. Pat Patterson was of course the creator of the Royal Rumble, and when himself and Vince McMahon designed this event, one of the most important decisions they had to make was on the name. What do you call the event, and how do you illustrate its importance through the name? In the end, Pat Patterson settled on calling it the Royal Rumble because it's the show that the Royal Rumble match is on. One of the most exciting Royal Rumbles ever was the 2013 Royal Rumble, because this is where history was made. In this Royal Rumble, Darren Young was one of the men who teamed up to eliminate Brodus Clay, and in doing so, made 2013 the Royal Rumble, which featured the most eliminations from any New Jersey-born 29-year-old Fredericks in the world that year. But 2021 is not a Royal Rumble that's seen in the same positive light, unfortunately. This is a Royal Rumble that's looked back on with shame and embarrassment, as it featured the lowest ever recorded attendance for any Royal Rumble in history. 0 fans bought a ticket that night, illustrating really just how low interest in the product must have been at that time. Finlay's able to swap participants in the Royal Rumble whenever he wants. This is one of those sneaky unwritten rules, but it's one that everyone's aware of. He's only ever used this rule once, back in 2019 when he swapped Lana for Becky Lynch, but it's something that he can bring out pretty much at any time he wants. And you'll be delighted to know that our next fun fact is also about Finlay. He got disqualified from the 2008 Royal Rumble for using a shillelagh, even though it's actually fully allowed. So technically, John Cena and Finlay are really co-winners of the 2008 Royal Rumble. The first Royal Rumble to ever take place was actually at a house show in 1987, and the winner was One Man Gang. The match apparently only lasted 12 minutes, so it's safe to assume that participants entered every 5 seconds and just sprinted out one after the other until the end. There's no time limit. Technically, a Royal Rumble could go on forever until every participant starves to death. As unlikely as that is, it is still technically a possibility, and I'd be lying if I told you that it didn't concern me just a little bit. Zach Gowen is technically invincible, as both feet are required to hit the floor for an elimination. In 1988, the first ever Royal Rumble on pay-per-view had to deal with some heavy competition at the time from NWA. The wrestling, not the rap group. But the reason why that's so interesting is because they still have to fear that same level of competition coming from NWA today. Speaking of 1988, the card for that show was unbelievably stacked, right? The show opened up first of all with Ricky Steamboat beating Rick Rude by disqualification. Then we had a tag title match. Then the Rumble. Then the Islanders versus Paul Roma and Jim Powers. And that's it. So it was a very, very stacked card. In both of the Royal Rumbles that he won, Batista apparently drew number 28. I don't know why he drew number 28, but after putting away the pen and paper, he actually ended up getting that number as his Royal Rumble number as well, and he won with it on both occasions. I once competed in a Royal Rumble. It was actually more of a Battle Royal than a Royal Rumble, but it was at my friend Sean's birthday, and my strategy was basically to sit in the corner like Raven or someone like that until the final 2, and then once it came down to the end, I pushed Sean off the bounce castle and I won. When Hacksaw Jim Duggan made his triumphant return to the Royal Rumble in 2009, many of the wrestlers in the match were scared because, you know, here's the man who won the 1988 Royal Rumble. He knows how to get it done, and he's back to reclaim what's his. However, they all calmed down once they remember that wrestling's fake, and the winner is actually chosen in advance either way. Big John Studd is the only wrestler in the world with a flawless 100% Royal Rumble win record, and because he's dead, that record will stay intact forever, so that's good. Well, not him dying, you know, the record, I mean. There's only ever been one murder in the history of the Royal Rumble, and that was in 2005 when Snitsky eliminated Paul London from his own life. London was seen on WWE TV for another couple of years, but he was played by a stunt double. We've seen several UFC stars in the Royal Rumble, from Brock Lesnar to Ken Shamrock to CM Punk to Ronda Rousey, but for some reason we've never seen any WWE wrestlers appear in the UFC's Royal Rumble. Have you ever wondered why the fans count down from 10 every time a wrestler makes their entrance? It's actually because they're legally obliged to, and anyone who doesn't join in gets ejected from the venue and banned from attending any future events. Mark Jindrak was in the 2005 Royal Rumble. Nothing is forcing a wrestler into the ring. Literally, if you draw number 3 in the Royal Rumble, nothing is forcing you to get in the ring. You could literally hide anywhere in the venue until you reach the end of the match, if you really wanted to. Have you ever wondered why the final 4 in every match take a minute to stare at each other? It's actually because they're legally obliged to, and anyone who doesn't join in gets ejected from the venue and banned from attending any future events. A-Train was in 6 different Royal Rumbles and has a whopping total of 0 eliminations, and he snitched on Mandy Rose because he's a pussy. Carmella competed in the 2018 Women's Royal Rumble despite already being Miss Money in the Bank because she's fucking greedy. The 2005 Royal Rumble was quite a mad one. That was the one where John Cena and Batista accidentally fell over the ropes and eliminated each other, so Vince McMahon ran down to restart the match and broke both his legs in the process. There are now adults alive that weren't born when this happened.